Welcome back to the Produce Industry Show. Heck, we're live on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, everyone. That's right. Now, we do live sessions, we would say once a month, and now we're getting into a lot of weekly, bi-weekly. We've got 3 live sessions set up for June, which I think are going to be amazing, everyone. Now, the last session we had with Paul Manfre, the audio was messed up. Heck, Paul and I were on for 15 minutes beforehand. The audio was still messed up. We couldn't figure it out, but now we're back. We've got Paul Manfre that is in Texas today. Obviously, I would love to say he's in studio, and he will be in studio here hopefully over the summer because we are planning it. But today we're going to come for part 2 of the Produce Manifesto. So let's go ahead and introduce Paul. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Patrick. Hello, every Pepper people. Patrick, congratulations on 1 million downloads on your podcast. Thank you
Thanks, man.
for what you're doing in the industry. It's great. It's
I
great.
appreciate you, man.
We need a little forward thinking in this archaic business of ours.
You know what's funny is before we get into the Produce Manifesto, I also got to talk about it because things that you were doing, 20, 30 years ago, you even talked about this. Remember, you were like, if we're doing the same thing 30 years ago, we're not in the right way of moving forward. Heck, now I'm talking about that from the 90s and the 2000s, right? You were talking about it the 80s, 90s to 2000s. And now we're here today, right? And there's completely new ways of doing business, Paul. We're doing the same, right? So that's one of the craziest things is that we're starting to understand that every time a new generation comes in, heck, every time new people come into our industry, Paul, we have to change some way, somehow. Am I right? We have.
Without a doubt. It's a great point because, I grew up in the Hunts Point market and I watched the different ethnicities move in. So we had Koreans moved in. They changed the retail business. Then we had Russians, Czechoslovakians, people from Turkey. Every one of them brought a change into the market about, how we're doing business. When I wrote the Produce Manifesto, I said there's a lot of things that you should keep, but there's also things you should throw away, and also to use some old ideas with the new technology to kind of move the produce business forward. And that's really been my whole thing. It's kind of like bringing the old and the new, merging them together, and finding new and better ways to merchandise, sell, and move produce and motivate people, on consumption. It's a message that I think resonates with people. But unfortunately, there are some people still in our industry stuck in the old ways of thinking. In fact, I just talked about this on Saturday. I said, unfortunately, the major part of our industry is controlled by retailers that are on the New York Stock Exchange. So you have shareholder value versus consumer value. So any CEO, and I'll point out that I think the problem with the produce industry in large retail is because the CEO is not a produce guy. It's probably like a Harvard MBA or something to that effect. But he's looking for shareholder value. His bonuses is predicated on his stock price going from, let's say, from $20 to $30. Whereas if you concentrate on consumer value, you're concentrating on getting more consumers in your store, giving them value, word of mouth, increased business, and in the end, hopefully that increases your value. Just, they're looking for the same point, but I just think they approach it from the wrong direction.
Listen, I'll be real with you. I get a lot of backlash, and there was a gentleman. There's a gentleman in our industry. He runs another podcast. I'll let you figure out who it is. And he's always like, before, I think he's blocked a few of us. Like, hey, you know who you are out there. But it was funny because I made a comment about baby boomers. Paul, you're a baby boomer.
Yes, I am.
Have you ever felt that I've disrespected the baby boomer community or yourself?
Absolutely not.
So this gentleman, as I talk about baby boomers, there's too many baby boomers controlling the ag industry still. Do you watch the show Yellowstone at all?
I love that show.
Okay, so Yellowstone, season 5 just came out. But they're talking about how, Kevin Costner's character is the old way of, ranching. And the kids are starting to see that, but because he's the power, he's the dad, they're not going to disrespect him. But if you've watched season 5, you're in for it because the kids start to rebut against dad. And that's what's happening with the baby boomer community. They feel that, what do you mean? I'm a millionaire. We've made so much money. We built this business, right? No, you didn't. The builder generation built. That'd be your mother, right? The
Right.
silent generation are the ones who built this businesses. The only difference is the silent generation went and retired at the age of 40 to 50 years old like they were supposed to. That made 30-year-olds, my dad, you included, being presidents and CEOs of companies for over 30 years. When have you heard CEOs and presidents have lifespans of 30 plus years in any one industry? So as a millennial, yeah, that's right, everyone. Hi, I'm Patrick. I'm a millennial. Yeah, I'm almost 40 years old, and I'm still seeing my dad has held the same position for the last 30 years of his life as the president and CEO. But you can't. I love you, Dad. But there's certain things you can't tell my dad because it's his business. That is what we see in the produce and supply chain industry. Heck, I hear it every day. Oh, Patrick, you're almost there, buddy. Another 5 years, and let's see what your numbers look like from there. I'm like, what are you talking about? We're making headways in new ways, and there's new ways of doing business. And that's why when we talk about the Produce Manifesto, that's why it was so interesting. Which one, I think we need to update it, right?
Right.
But it's like, we just talked about this, and I think we should move right into it. Number 2 in the Produce Manifesto says we can't pay that much for help. And we touched on this a little bit, but we even talked about this in the beginning of in the green room. You and I were talking about it while we were getting our audio. I said, companies think, hey, I'm going to go ahead and hire Paul Manfre for $60,000 a year. Now, Paul, you've got to cover your salary, and I'll give you commission on anything over the 60 grand, but you got to cover your salary. That is such an old way of doing business, and it still happens to this day because you have the mindset of, I'm not giving you the money from our profits. You need to come on and make your own money like I did when I started.
Right.
We don't have enough money to pay people because why, Paul?
Well,
The
I could argue
marketing
that.
too,
I
right?
could I could argue that from two perspectives. I'll
Please,
give
I'd
you,
love
I'll
to
give
hear
you,
it.
I'll give you an example. At Top Cats, we've hired many people in the past, and whenever we've given them their salary, their salary, their starting salary, to kind of like get them rolling, and we did it for 6 months, a year, and it wasn't, and it was, I could tell you this, it was more than $60,000 a year. 90% of the time, as soon as that salary ended, those people quit because they really weren't the right person. But from the standpoint where I believe you're coming from is you're there to do a job, right? To increase sales, customer service. So there is an inherent value in that. But when I mentioned in the Produce Manifesto about paying people, it really came from the retail perspective, because 20 or 30 years ago, when I was young, Patrick, uh, usually the owner or a family would run a produce department or produce store. Those guys bought the stuff, sold the stuff, merchandise stuff, priced the stuff. They did all those things. They interacted with consumers. They knew how to push the stuff. If, for example, when I had my retail stores, I had something that looked ugly. It tasted delicious. I cut that up. I said, "Why don't you try this? I know it looks ugly, but can't judge a book by its cover." And oh my God! And I would sell stuff. So my perspective with paying people, large retail, by and large, took all those produce managers, by the way, which will train your next generation of produce managers, right? So you have a produce manager, he's got 5 guys working under him. Well, in the old days, that's what we did. Those 5 guys learned under his tutelage for a couple of years, and all of a sudden they became a produce manager if he opened up another store. But what large retail did is said, well, this guy gets $60,000 a year. We're going to replace him for $7 an hour guy. And then they, to compensate for that, you came in with these, this box in, box out display program. And that to me was the the densification of the produce department and and retail sales. And that's really where, when I wrote the Produce Manifesto all those years ago, that was the point I was trying to make.
Paul, and it makes sense because as I'm going through it too, it's down to the retail level. That's why I said I think we need to upgrade the Produce Manifesto to more look at retail,
Wholesale,
wholesale,
yes.
and the grower pack because people don't understand. I was having this conversation with Mike Chavez as we just hired a new employee as a sales manager at Golden Star. And we talk about this all the time. Like, what's the value that this person is going to hold? What do they manage? And then obviously we talk about commissions and how you can better yourself. But, look at it as like, let's just take a $40 million, farm, right? And you look at that, you think, oh, $40 million, man, these guys are banking. But when you have 50 to 70 employees, right? And the overhead and running the packing house. I mean, the light bill alone is $30 to $50,000 a month, right? The electricity. And then you got someone that comes on and says, oh, I want a couple $100,000 a year. Man, it's a grower packer shipper, man. Like no one's making that much at grower packer shippers. Now, okay, I'm laughing. There's probably a few out there going, okay, Pat, I'm making a couple 100,000. But the level of the grower packer shipper, how's that affecting them in the long run? Right now, they're counting those sales, right? Because as soon as you don't hit that number, you're getting looked at very hard. And we all know this, dealing with, Walmarts of the world or the Sam's Clubs, right? The big boys of these big box companies. Sometimes those contracts range year to year. Sometimes Paul, the Red Pepper King's in with a 500 loads a year. Next year, they got a 25-cent discount and they're going to prime time for that year.
You
And
know,
that could really screw a lot of things up, man.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to just explain to maybe non-produce people. It's only about the story. Large retailer tells you about how they care about the farmer. There's not a large retailer in the country that's going to say, Mr. Farmer, we want to pay you more because we care about you. They look to pay less and less and charge consumers more and more because it's only about the bottom line. It's only about profits. I just want everyone to understand that. And people don't understand what farmers do to stay in business. I invite everyone to, check out Shay Myers. He gives you Farming 101. He tells you, the other day he was online, turkeys ate his watermelon plants. You know what I mean? Like, you got to worry about wind. You got to worry about cold. You got to worry about drought. You got to worry about water. You got to worry about everything else. You got to worry about the bees. You got to worry about everybody else. And then you got to get a crop to market. So that's why I fight so hard for the farmers. And believe me, retail is the conduit to the consumers. It is the biggest conduit to the consumers. We need retail, but we need retail to respond in a responsible way. And I'm not saying giving away the store, Patrick. I'm only saying when we have gluts, and in this business, we always have gluts. We have shortages, we have gluts. I'm just asking retailer, Mr. Retailer, when we have a glut, change your price to give a consumer a bargain, help the farmer move the product, because that's how you could really help a farmer, is by moving a product when there is too much, giving it a bargain price to consumer. And as I pointed out in the Produce Manifesto, with those items, the increased volume, I will predict, will surpass any of the profits you would have made on lesser volume at a higher margin.
I mean, I believe it's the truth. And I think that that's where we talked about, again, paying for the help. We even talked to, a little bit last time on, lower price consumers will not buy anymore. That's also true as well, because people think, I was talking to, look at the juicer. You've always seen my juicer. Jay, I'm sorry. There's a Equifer soccer ball in there right now. But what's funny is that I have many conversations with directors of produce, and I live in a world that citrus is a very tough product to sell when you're up against Halos and Cuties and some of these big brands. It's definitely one of those things where what do you have to offer a retailer? Because someone comes to me and they're like, "Oh, do you carry Cuties or Halos?" And I'm like, Do you see that sign on my company? Like, no, right? And then people will say, well, what do you have to offer? And when I tell people our organization doesn't actually pack mandarins like clementines and cuties, they're like, oh, right. So it's a hard sell to just say, I'm just going to sell you navels, and it's this 38-year-old brand, this grower brand. There's nothing really out there, right? So the juicer we bring to the trade shows, which you've seen right at our booth. And we bring these. So when directors of produce come by and they say, oh, cool, what's that? I said, this will help grow your citrus department 3 to 6%. Wait, what? I'm sorry, what did you say? And I say, yes. So you put the initial investment in the juicer here, the Citrus America juicer. This is what I tell them. Ready? You're going to love this, Paul. You're going to buy $11,000 worth of citrus a month to put in your store. They say, yes, correct. I said, so no matter what, you're going to sell, buy $11,000 and you're going to resell that. Correct. This investment can be anywhere from 9 to 15,000, depending on the unit that you get, a one-time cost. You're still going to spend $11,000 a month buying fruit, but you're going to add now probably 2 to 3,000 extra a month in citrus to run your juicer. Meaning that each month you're going to do now $15,000 a month, paying your juicer off within 6 to 8 months.
Right.
Meaning the additional $3,000 to $5,000 of units that you're bringing in is now pure profit from the juicer, and now you've added 3 to 6% to your citrus category as a whole. There's my game, everyone. If you wanted to know how I sold citrus, there it is. Because I myself have a hard time competing with these big. Like, I got Sumos right here. Look, I got the Sumos brand right here. Sorry, Mike. You know I love Sumos. But it's funny because I have to sell in a different way than just going, oh, I've got this big brand. I have a Cuties. I have a Halos. I've got a Peels. I've got a Big Honeys. No, I have to come in a different way to help grow your category, right? And I think that's the difference. So when you look at those things and you look at, I can't just say, you know what? What's wonderful at? They're at $18. I'll give it to you for 15. They're still going to buy $11,000 of produce. They're not
Right.
going to buy any more, right?
Right. We talked about this once before, and this is on a sidetrack. If a buyer doesn't know all the players in a market, whether it's the pepper business, the citrus business, the squash business, Mr. Large Retailer, you need a new buyer. I don't do business with everybody, but I know what everyone is doing. And listen, I'm just not about peppers. I should do that on my web. Patrick, I have to shout out to my new website, redpepperking.com. I should put up there, we're not just peppers, but really if you're a buyer and you don't know what the competition is, like if you buy Cuties and you buy all these other things and you don't know that Patrick Kelly sells other citrus, you're not doing your job. It's incumbent on you to know what everyone else is doing. That's how you could bring value to your organization, to consumers, and to farmers that you don't get. And what you said, Patrick, is the type of things that I've been speaking about, because you could take that same system and apply it across all of the produce industry. You heard me say this before. Produce people are a breed apart. Physical delivery of a perishable commodity. While the price is going up, the price is going down, the stuff is going rotten. You sell that, you can sell anything. We've always found new and improved ways to merchandise ourselves, to think out of the box, to move our product. A perfect example, I'll bring it up again. During COVID, every shelf was empty except the produce aisle. Everybody.
I mean, I was just, some were empty because of distribution channels, but we won't go into that. But you're right. Let's see. I want to try and do this, Paul. I've never tried this before, and I think it's a great time to try it. Let's see if we can. Oh, it is unable. So I can't share your website on this. I have to do a little bit of
It's okay.
I would say some settings changing, but we will. We'll show that when you look later. We'll put the Red Pepper King website up so you can get an idea. But you know what's funny, Paul, is I said this to someone the other day because someone called me and were like, "Hey, your podcast and blog are amazing." And I first to myself said, "Man, when did I start a blog?" I was like, "I don't have a blog." Right? Because I don't.
Right,
I
right,
have a vlog, which is a video log, and I have
right.
a podcast, right? But yeah, it was like there's no blog. And then I finally had to tell this person, it was about a month and a half ago, I go, we're more than a podcast. You know that, right? And the gentleman says, no. I said, we've got a mobile application, we've got a YouTube channel. I said, I'm involved with 2 packing houses in California. I've been in this, my family's been in citrus. They literally was like, no. All
Yeah.
I thought was you had a blog and a podcast. And I was like, listen, I'm still trying to find my blog. There's a blog out there somewhere apparently that I do. A
Yeah.
blog is writing, right? Now,
Right.
I do not write as much as I should, but um let's go back because obviously we were talking about the lower the prices for consumers. And I think as we start to get new buyers, we start to get more educated buyers, and I'm not downing anybody, but sometimes I've seen this. You get a dairy guy that gets promoted and they put him in produce. You get a bakery guy that gets promoted or produce, or the produce guy goes to bakery because he's tired of it.
Patrick, could I interrupt you for 1 second? I
Yes.
I watch. Sometimes without saying, you get emails from different produce hiring companies, right? They'll have, I don't want to say the company, but big retail produce chain, buyer, 6 months experience. 6 months. At 6 months, you don't even know how many boxes are on a skid in the produce business. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
again, because there's not buyers, their order entries, we bought 66 boxes of navel oranges last year. Give me 66 boxes this year from
Yeah.
the same guy, from the same time, from the same to same to same. Not
Yep.
taking anything about the industry, all the variations of that, what could and will happen into effect. And
Yep.
that's why 6 months experience for a large chain produce buyer is feasible. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Well, it goes into the comment. We have a comment that I'm going to post up here by John Pandel, which is actually a great comment, and it's so true because when I used to work at Winn Dixie when I was a kid, and I started off as a bagger, right, and then I got promoted to a stock boy, right? That's what they called us back then.
Right.
But we had to legitimately do each job for at least 6 months, right, to understand what was going on and do training with people. Like I remember training and training programs, I would say, have gone away, right? They have just completely gone away. So it's like a lot of times that's happening, and then you got these buyers that have to manage 17 to 30 commodities. Look what John Pandel said. He said, CEO of grocery used to rise from the ranks of store operations. He had a store apron in his past. He stocked shelves and interacted with consumers for years before he moved upstairs. Today's CEOs enter directly into managerial ranks. Like many from where? Like where,
College.
right? And he goes on to say, because this is a little bit of a longer post, they come from finance, right? So to many, from Paul's point, he says they've never been a shopkeeper and made those different decisions. So it has. And again, like I know many produce buyers and they tell me how crazy their life is as a produce buyer managing 30 different commodities, remembering the skids, remembering how much pallets, remembering what the temperatures are for all of these loads, right? And then you got guys like us that are calling and going, hey, we'll give you a good deal. And they're just like, I don't want a good deal. I want to get through the day. So their jobs are completely different than where they were probably years ago. And I remember my nana was a produce clerk. She retired as a produce clerk. She didn't go anywhere else. That's what she did, right? So it's like I agree that I think that times have changed, but I also think that education and training has completely gone out the window too.
Yeah, if the onboarding at every level of the produce industry right now is very, very important.
Look what
It's
Daniel says. This is hilarious. This is hilarious. Daniel, you're spot on.
You're probably right. I always give this example. I always say, people want to learn about the produce business. I say, okay, how many red peppers are on a skid, right? And they go, I don't know how many. Well, it could be 70, 77, 84, 56, 64, 80, 90, 100, 110. And I said, that's just boxes. That's not type. That's not even knowing what quality the
Varieties.
stock.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So, just he's probably right. At 6 months, you don't even know how many boxes are on a skid. You
Listen,
know what I mean? Like,
I'll be real with you because we keep talking about this, and I think that that's one that needs to go in is training in the Produce Manifesto. because you're right. You can't just lower prices. You can't just give 40% off. You can't just compete with pricing, right? And that's something I was telling
What,
one of our managers the other day. We were talking and I said, "Do you know why we spray copper on fields?" No. Do you know why we skirt trees? No. Do you know why we jib fruit? No. Do you want to know why we have these schedules and how important it is? The answers were no. And ready? This person has been in the industry for 2 years. So, but again, we're so focused on our daily activities and we get so involved with that we do not look at these extracurricular things. Like if you want to ship to China with citrus, you have to skirt your trees. You've got to spray copper. This has to do with export, right? So a lot of those things too, I think really has to do with training and who you're working for, because a lot of times you go to work for somebody, right? And they just say, all right, welcome. Here you go. Here's your list of people.
yeah.
You're an adult. You can do it. And you're sitting there going, okay, well then Paul Manfre calls me and starts telling me 17 different pepper varieties. And I'm going, well, do you want red or green? Because I'm looking for red or green, right? I mean, same thing. I can talk about citrus all day. You
Yeah.
know how many navel varieties there really are?
I don't even know.
I
No.
mean, there's a lot, okay?
I know there's like 300 or 400 different kinds of apples. You know what I mean?
Mangoes have
Like,
over 1,000 different varieties, right?
yeah,
All these different things. So it's like, what's a Barnesfield navel? What's a Beck navel? What's a Washington? What's a Fukumoto? What's a Fisher, right? And to some people, they might be listening. They're like, Pat, you're getting too deep and granulated. Okay, but guess what? I know that a Beck is elongated versus a Fukumoto or a Washington. I know that a Barnesfield, the Koreans like Barnesfields better than they like the Fukumotos or the Washingtons. So these are things that now all of a sudden you want to elevate as a manager or a sales manager. You need to understand these things to be able to produce for your customer, to be able to be educated enough just to have a casual conversation, Paul. And I think that's what
yeah,
the most important thing is. I can care less.
yeah.
Ready? I'm going to be so rude right now to you, right? I can care less about this produce manifesto because what I care more about is the evolution of what you're going to create moving forward, the evolution of this manifesto into the next generation of thinkers.
You know what you said is very true. You can't live at the bottom. I when I say value to consumers, I don't want retailers to just give away the store. I don't want farmers to go out of business. But there is value in educating your help, educating all your help for many of the reasons you just said. Because let's take it what I really intended. Let's say a produce manager in your store, if he knows all the different varieties and knows what's in season and when, knows like you should eat your, sycamore honeydews in August and September because that's when you can't pick a bad one. And you could, eat cantaloupes from the west side, eat these peaches. These are the things that consumers really appreciate. I started out as a fruit peddler in New York City, and women used to come up to me and say, I have a dinner party on Saturday night. Could you pick a melon for me? So I would go and I pick out a melon and I smell it and I squeeze and everything. I said about 7 o'clock, good, and oh yes, 7 o'clock would be perfect. You know what I mean? Like you have to make the experience fun, knowledgeable, and then add value to it. I think, and I think the value is in all the other things more because people are going to pay more for an
Yes.
education too, right? I always said this. Large retail
100%.
always concentrated on the center store, always concentrated on the center
Why
store,
would you
and
wait? Is
never.
that a pepper order? Should we answer
Yeah,
that?
I actually turned down a pepper order. They all concentrate on the center store and use produce to kind of like pay for the center store, right? My belief, and I know this to be true, is that if you concentrate on fresh, people will go and pay the 6 cents more for the canned
No.
corn than your competition,
Yes.
right? I know that in my bones. People go now to their supermarket for the fresh. They don't really care how much the macaroni and cheese costs if it's 4 cents less, at one store over the other. If you have a superior produce department.
I agree with you. I mean, look at a grocery store like Gelson's and Pavilions and Bristol Farms, very high end grocery stores in Southern California. and the prices are different because I mean their locations, their demographics, and what they go into. But listen, I walked in, I believe it was a Bristol. It had its own parfait bar. Okay, like I'm sorry, like at that point, I don't care what the parfait costs, man. Ross Nelson and I were like you know what I mean? We were like, should we partake in the parfait? Right?
Parfait.
Because it was the way it was set up, the way it was displayed, right? And it was cool because Melissa's was actually sampling some of the pink pineapples and the dino melon and things like that, which obviously then at that point, did I care how much it cost? No, I was like, oh my God, where is that on the shelf? Right. And then we're picking up snacks. But again, I liked your point that if the produce community, right, or the produce that store isn't elevated enough, like you were just saying, then yeah, they're going to compare pricing, right? They're going to do all those
But
things together.
But you know what? You have to also know your customer.
True.
You
Very
can't
true.
have a dino melon for $7 in an area that's not going to support a $7 melon. Just like I pointed out in the Produce Manifesto, like, I like big displays. I tell you the truth, I like uh, produce displayed naked. I always say that. I just think it looks better. It had more eye appeal is buy appeal. But I wouldn't want you to put out $10,000 worth of produce if you're going to only sell $2,000 in the next 3 days. Everything is proportionate to your sales, but with the added effect of trying to increase your sales. Now, there's ways of dumbing. I can make displays that look like you have a skid of produce, but you have a few boxes. Again, a lot of this stuff may be a lost art too, but knowing your customer, knowing your clientele, and again, that's getting back to a great produce manager that could, that if he was in the store communicating with your customers, training your help, he would be able to do all these
No,
things.
I agree with you. Let's take a couple comments from some live viewers. John Pandel jumped in again and said, at one time, buyers determined what would be in the store based on availability, quality, and price. Today,
Yep.
merchandisers decide what will be on the shelf based on the history and whatever presentation he or she received, and the buyer is just an order entry clerk. I mean, I have seen
Yeah.
that. I mean, 6 months experience with a prior buyer is like their Excel spreadsheets, as John was saying, and
Yeah.
I think that's the key. I mean, John also says knowledge is power. The goal is to know more than the other guy or girl, but also to strategically share knowledge in the same way to be successful. And that's what I feel like. Listen, let's go back to your comment. You said, 1 million downloads should have charged a download, right? I'd have $1 million, but what did I say back to you? I said, I want everybody to be able to consume free knowledge, right? I want everybody to understand that we're here to build this produce industry together. And if someone can take, our podcast and say, you know what, Paul's right, or you know what, Suhandra Conradi's right. Let's look at how our department is. Let's look at building better displays. That's where I think you're going to get the value out of this, right?
I
And
agree.
that's what it's about. It's about growing our community together. Daniel Olivia jumped back in. I think this had to do with the Bristol Farms or Pavilions, but he said first experience they offered me champagne while I shop. That's an experience, my friend. That is an experience. But how did look at John's comment? John, shopping Gelson's, Patrick, not in your tax bracket. Definitely not. Everybody that knows me, yeah, Gelson's is definitely overpriced. I am a Publix guy because it's a quarter mile down the street here in Tampa, and we don't have those stores, right? We don't have the Gelson's, the Pavilions. The nice stores that we have here are Publix. Like I'm going to be real with you. I mean, we've got our Sprouts, we've got our Aldi's, but if you want to see an amazing produce department, I always say Publix does do a great job. I've never walked into Publix and seen empty shelves. I've always walked into Publix and seen 3 to 4 people, one stacking the green walls, one rotating, one customer service walking
Wow,
around.
that's great.
Listen, I can tell you because I do videos. I'll be like, Paul, I'll take this for instance. I'll be like in the store and I'll be like, boom, and then all of a sudden, like, I'll be like, hey, and they're like, can we help you? And I'm like, good looking strawberries today, man. They're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm just sitting there like, no, hey, Steve. Yeah, no, great produce department. Yeah, I run the produce. Yeah, we've seen you before. But it's like, even then, you've got their workers that are engaging with people and talking with them, whether I was taking a picture or not, right? He came up, hey, can I help you with anything? If I would have asked the
That
question of where does this strawberry come from, right? I mean, they always do a good job, is what I'm saying. And again, I'm
that is so important, Patrick. Having people in your produce department to talk to consumers, I would say put that on the top of the list.
100%, and I think that a lot of companies do that. Again, I shop at others. John, this one's for you. When I travel, I shop at every other grocery store. Right? I go support every other grocery store. When I'm in Florida, I only shop for produce at
Publix.
Publix. Publix, you should really be thinking about this strategy with me because but but
I smell a new
listen
sponsor.
though, but ready, I'm gonna throw something out there to a lot of people because I have I have a lot of haters out there, and I appreciate every single one of my haters out there. I had someone at West Coast point at me and say, "Oh, the guy that only represents brands that he's paid for." Yeah, that's right, Paul. People say stuff like that to me, and you know who you are because you're probably listening because you're one of those hater slash followers. But I looked at them and I go, "Oh, thank you." And of course, they walked away, and I said to a few other people, they go, "What was that about?" I said, "Same old stuff, just another day." I go, "But guess what?" I go, I support Equifruit, their fair trade bananas, right? But I would be a hypocrite if I said I support them 100% because unfortunately, I don't get Equifruit fair trade bananas in Tampa. So
Right.
now it's like I still have to buy other bananas, everybody. I still show bananas on all my videos, but then I say stuff like this. Is it fair trade, everyone? Right? Because I support the brands that I love, right? But I also know that if I only supported the brands that I was paid for, I'd be skinnier than I am now. I love Equifruit. I right.
Yeah.
I love the Sunrays brand. Right. I love the Red Pepper King. But guess what? My peppers that I'm normally buying are probably Sunset or Mastronardi because that's what's in Publix, right?
Right.
So again, maybe a little bit of my fault, Paul. Maybe I should drive around, hit up some of the other grocery stores, right? But in another sense, I'm kind of like, I like this store. I love I love it. And if some of my brands aren't in there, I'm still buying lettuce every day. I'm still buying, I mean, come on, everyone, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to when I go to the restaurant, I always order a salad, even if I don't want it. I always say you got to keep the stuff
Got to keep
moving.
it moving.
Got to keep the stuff moving.
Let's see. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Andreas Fernandez jumped in. Oh, Fernando. He said publicly definitely knows how to. I agree. They've got it. They've got a good thing going on. John wrote again. John's one of our avid followers and commenters. Publix ESOP owned by employees. Are the ESOP stores better than the NASDAQ private equity owned chains? That would be an interesting comparison. John, I didn't know that. Like that's something
I didn't
I
know
did
it either.
not know that, John. I would, you know what? Challenge accepted, John. I need to find out which ones are store owned publicly or privately, right? Private versus equity owned. I think that's a great conversation to have and a great comparison.
You know the answer. You know
I
the
already
answers
do,
now.
but I want to
So
see it.
yeah,
I think
let's.
mine's private. The
In
one that
fact, that's what we'll do when I come to Florida.
ooh,
We'll
that's a
all
great
right,
idea.
right. When I come to Florida, we'll go to 10 stores, 5 and
Let's do
five.
it. There, John also has, for the record, he does not pay the podcast. He doesn't. John Pandel is not a sponsor. He is a contributor because he supports what we do as a whole as an opportunity, right? I like that he says yet, but he is an official four-wheel drive sponsor. When we go to California, he's got the truck to pick us up. Did you see that Halos picture that I did where I was behind the big Halo sign? We had to go
No.
off road over railroad tracks. Like I'm pretty sure if a cop pulled us over, he would have given us all breathalyzer because he'd be like, "What are you guys doing? You're going over railroad tracks, like through the forest, over the woods. Like we passed grandmother's house to get to that Halo sign. Like it's just in a spot where you can't, you really shouldn't go. Right? It's over the railroad tracks. Let's see. Jehoon jumped in Isn't Winco one of them too? June, are you talking about uh, stores that are publicly or privately owned, or stock ownership as well? That's a good question. Winco is a store in California that I shopped at. Hy-Vee, yeah, okay. John responds. Hy-Vee, Winco, a lot. Okay, wow. There's a lot that are they're the same model too. Jehoon and John are going back and forth saying our designated tour guide of Central Valley, John. I love John. John's
Patrick, I can only speak, like just think about the last 10, 15 years of all the chains that went out of business, Pathmark, A&P, you know what I mean? All those big chains. And I always made this comparison. So what happened to all those produce directors and produce buyers?
oh,
Don't you know another chain hired them? So
100%.
I'm like, you're right? Like I'm thinking, so the people that put this business out of business is a good hire for you. You know what I mean? Like doesn't and getting back to what you said, maybe that's what's wrong with the produce business. Maybe and you know what you said about young people? I just want to point this out. The
Please.
people that wrote the Constitution, I think the average age was 28 years old. I just want you all to realize that. So sometimes, you know,
I love that.
yeah,
They might seem old to us now,
yeah.
but listen,
Now they're
this is
275
my
years old.
one politic thing that I'm going to say. And I
Go
am
ahead.
very, very reserved when I talk about politics. People are going, oh boy. Here's the deal here, everyone. Oh gosh, I'm not getting in trouble for this, but I'm going to say it. Okay. 35 years old is the age to be the president of the United States. They made that for a reason. Okay. But yet we believe that when you get older in life is when you become more educated and knowledgeable. I disagree with that statement. I believe as you're coming up in your youth, right, your teens to your young adulthood to your adulthood, that is giving you time for creativity, innovation, and the biggest thing of all, which is failing. Failing fast and failing hard is one of the best things that any of us can do. But we get to a point where we want to hire elect people that are 60 plus years old because we believe, well, they've got the experience and the know how to do it all. I've come to this notion that I'm not going to vote for anybody over the age that could pull Social Security. Because at that point in my life, I believe that we should be looking to our youth. But the problem is that we see youth inferior to us, and that's when egos come into play. And realistically, we got to take ego aside and know that we're representing billions of people. That's my one politics thing that I always say to everybody is learn that 35 years of age is when you can start becoming the president. You don't need 60 years of prerequisites to do these types of things. You just got to know what you're in it for, man. And that's where I'm going to leave that because I do believe that our founding fathers, our look at the first 40 presidents, how old they were, how they contributed. They were farmers, they were welders, they were architects, right? They were trade people. And now we think you got to, now don't get me wrong, Ben Franklin, John Adams, yes, they studied law.
And they didn't get paid to
Yes,
do
they
that job.
understood law, but come on. At the end of the day, creativity, innovation, and the willingness to serve your people is what you should be thinking about, right? That's just my one politics. Like I kind of stay very streamlined, but I also support the American farmer is what I do support.
Yeah.
Just saying. I'm just saying.
Farmer for president.
Let's see. The 28-year average of the American citizen would expect to live to 30. Oh, John, baby's got John Pap's got some history coming in. John, that's a great thing to bring up. 28 average, but the average American citizen could expect to live to 35. And that was probably the reason why they put it at 35. Man, what a great comment. And John, of course, Pandal jumps in. So if I ran for office, you wouldn't vote for me. I want to retire and be a dog catcher for Kern County. Yeah, I definitely would not vote for you, John. Listen, I love you to death, but I think your retirement should be smoking cigars overlooking, Napa Valley or, Pismo on the.
Driving a 4x4.
I'm just saying, like, come on. Like, I love the boomers. I do. I love you guys, right? But I always say, Paul, the reason you guys are still working is because you guys have no personal hobbies. Your hobby is your life and your work, and I appreciate and
Yeah.
respect that, right?
I said the produce business has been my hobby, my lover, my girlfriend. You know what I mean? That's it. You know, people. When I was a produce buyer in the Hunts Point Market for a chain, I I used to go to work, 7, 8 o'clock at night and work through the nights. So what would happen on Friday nights, I'd be up and I would just get out of bed and go to one of my stores. And as therapy, I used to just put up displays. I used to get that, the guy, wheel me out 5 of this, wheel me out 10 of that. Let's take this and move it over here. That was my therapy. If I wasn't going out drinking, but that was a different time.
If I wasn't going out drinking or doing other consumption of other things. No, I agree. Well, let's go back. We're going to talk about these last couple minutes as we wrap up this show, everyone. And again, we'll have Paul back on to talk about this. But here's one of the biggest things. Now, I'm going to read this off, and we're not going to get too heavy into it. But if you look towards the future, Paul, you had a great notion to this, and the Produce Manifesto ends with planning for success. Okay. And it's a couple things we already talked about, Paul, which was let's go educate, innovate, renovate, stimulate, agitate, and dominate. Those are things that I believe that are very true. And again, one thing we need to update this Produce Manifesto is fail hard and fail fast. Okay. That's one thing I can tell you. People ask me all the time, why are you so successful? I said, well, I've been training at failing for so long. I said, success, when it happens, it just looks good sometimes on you because you've been failing
Yeah.
so long, right? So,
I always do that. I've been knocked down 7, got up 8.
yeah.
I've made and lost 3 fortunes. I know what it's like, to have $1 million, and I also know what it's like to have $3 left in my
Or
name.
negative,
And that's
or
true.
negative,
That
owe a
is
lot of debt, right? Like,
that's a true story. I'll never forget. After having several hundred thousand just in my personal checking account, 2 years later, went for a job, and the last $3 to my name, literally the last $3 from my name, was to pay the toll on the Throgs Neck
I remember
Bridge.
you telling me that.
And 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 I have to tell you, you will learn more from your failures than you ever will from your successes.
Yep.
And that's all I can tell you. Been knocked down 7, got up 8.
Listen,
Just got to keep on
I
trying.
failed at businesses. I put businesses out of business, and people say, don't talk about that. And I go, what do you mean? I said, I'm allowed to fail. The problem with society is they don't want to see the losers. But here's a quote. I have it written down, and I'm going to post this. You don't get better when you win all the time. When you look at your focus, it comes from when you fail. You focus better when you fail than when you win. Your ego gets larger when you win. And that's the problem with winning all the time. You expect it too much. I've told everybody, and I've chatted with you about this. I do jujitsu, and I got into jujitsu for more mental health and working out, right, Paul? And do you know what the difference between a white belt and a black belt are? You
Yeah,
do? Tell
yeah.
me.
About 6 years.
I love that. It's about 10, but a black belt is a white belt who never gave up.
Right,
Meaning, do you know how many fights I lose every single week?
right.
So people don't understand. And Conor McGregor said this in his Netflix series. He lost 3 rounds in professional matches, right? 3 rounds he lost and, wasn't crowned the world champion. Conor McGregor did a press release and they said, how do you feel to lose? He goes, you guys only see the big lose. Every day I go to the gym, every single day, he goes, you think I win every fight against my sparring partners? He goes, absolutely not. He goes, I fail thousands of times a year, but you guys see 3 and you want to judge me on that? He goes, winning is me constantly training and constantly being a better version of myself. That is the win for him. Keeping his body in shape, doing what he loves. He's been knocked out. He's been hurt. So have I. My shoulder, my pinky. But at the end of the day, do I go to the gym and go, if I don't win, I'm not lifting another weight. If I can't bench 300 pounds, I'm out of this place. No. there's failures in success, everyone, and that's something that I just keep talking about more and more and more. Fail hard, fail fast, find your passion, and trust me, everything else will just come right into play. It might not be the way
Yeah.
you envisioned it, but it'll come into play.
Yeah. I like I always say, Patrick. You know, you do what you love. You know, people always say, Paulie, when you're retiring, what do I say, Patrick? 3 days after I die, 5 days if the market's hot.
Yeah. Very, very true. Let's see. John's got another comment, and then we're gonna wrap this session up. So, best marketing professor ever. Term project: analyze marketing failure. Corporate Kenny's hide their failures in the footnotes of reports instead of learning from the autopsy. You're so right, John.
Yeah, great, great,
You're so right.
great
And again,
observation.
I talk about this just in my personal career. It's like, listen, we only know what we know, and we all don't know what we don't know, right? But again, if you're never willing to learn or reach out, then you're never going to fail, right? I mean, I started jujitsu over a year ago. I'm competing in 22 days. I'm going to compete at the age of 37 years old, and I have no idea what to expect. But what I can expect that this other person is going to try and murder me. Like that's what I know. Like that in my head, I'm like that they're going to. But in my head, my opportunities for success are not even winning, Paul.
It's learning.
It's learning. If I get through this competition without getting hurt, with surviving the rounds, that to me is going to be success in itself. And I might never compete again after this, right? But I'm doing it to test myself. And if I fail, I'm okay with failing. I'm okay with it. And some of
Yeah, I
my
got it.
teammates go, Pat, you got the wrong attitude, man. When you go to competition, your goal is to win, win, win. You want to do this, you want to do this. And I sit there and I said, to you it is. To me, it's a different lifestyle and a different setting. So, Paul, anything you want to close out with the Produce Manifesto, man?
Well, we didn't really talk about the Produce Manifesto too much today. But we had a lot of good
We
stuff.
did
You know what I
we
mean? We had a
did
lot.
because I pulled it from the
Yeah,
pricing, the people.
yeah,
We had a
yeah.
lot, but I think we're
But
more talking about updating it more than we are
yeah,
talking about it, right?
we talked about we're gonna get a pen author, and I'm just gonna talk, and you're gonna do the writing because I the Produce Manifesto, the last five. I'm glad you brought those up because remember writing those. You know, to renovate, to change the look of your store, to agitate, to shake up pricing, shake up, I remember all those like I was not verbatim, but I remember writing those originally, and I think without reading them out loud again, I think they probably still hold true. I still believe in the packaging part. I think produce uh, looks better naked. I've said that. I understand there is a need for packaging in some respects. And I think we were moving towards less packaging before the COVID epidemic hit. And then it exploded, that people didn't want anything without packaging. But I think in France, I think they got rid of packaging, unnecessary packaging. That's a Europe thing. To me, it it makes no sense that you want to ban plastic straws, but you don't want to ban a 2 pound plastic container for produce. So. But Patrick, I promise you, I will sit down one of these days and update the Produce Manifesto. And I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with all of you. I appreciate all of you that follow me on LinkedIn also. And please go to my website. And more importantly, we have red peppers available out of California now. And for those that are involved in the red pepper business, last year was a very, very tough market. And you might need the red pepper king in your corner again this year. I can tell you one thing: every one of my customers didn't get all they needed, but they all got what they needed. All right. So in the future, call me and Remember, I'm not just about peppers.
You're
This is
more. You're
Paulie
more
Pepper.
than peppers, right?
I'm more than
That's a
peppers. I'm gonna make that my logo, Paulie. I'm more than peppers.
hey, Patrick Kelly. More than a podcast, right?
There you go.
Well, listen. I'm not traveling for the next couple months. Where's the next show? Where are you going to be at next, man? Are you traveling? Besides, we know we're going to work on you coming down for the summer. What's the next show?
Uh, well, the end of June, I'll be in New York just for the weekend. One of my customers, I'm going to be in the Hunts Point Market just one day. July, I have tentatively penciled in you in July coming to Florida.
Let's
And then August, we start again, and I have to go. I'm going to Northern California, probably in July or August also. But then the shows, I believe, these are my travel shows.
Oh boy,
Yeah. So we got the NEPC in
in
August.
August,
Then we got the SCPC in September.
September.
The PMA in October.
Woo!
Nogales Convention in November. Christmas in Columbia. Uh, and the New York Produce Show. Oh, that's all. The New York Produce Show. Don't forget the Paulie Produce Tour. It's going to be on December 5th in the morning. And we have a great after party after the New York Produce Show. So if you haven't been to a New York Produce Paulie tour of the Hunts Point Market, definitely this year is going to be totally different. I'm going to have the merchants that were 3 and 4 and 5 generations part of the tour to explain their history as well as my history.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see you at NEPC. Obviously, you know me and Southeast Produce Council. I'm at every single one of their shows. Support them heavily. And then I am working to get to the New York Produce Show this year for my first time. I'm hoping to be able to strike that with your team and get up there as well. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward to seeing you. I'm looking forward to seeing the creativity, innovations, and everything that the industry has. So, Paul, thanks for joining today, and we appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you.
All right, everyone. Well, that is our session today. Paul Manfre, who wants peppers, everyone, with the Produce Manifesto. Listen, we talked a little bit about the Produce Manifesto, but more about updating it and bringing it into the times of today. I want to give a huge shout out to all of our sponsors here at the podcast, our fancy sponsors who make so much happen behind the scenes: Ag Tools, Flavor Wave, Noble Citrus, John Green Logistics, Summer Citrus from South Africa, Awahi Produce, and Buck Naked Onions, everyone. Again, check us out on our website, The Produce Industry Podcast, as we keep updating it. The Produce Industry Show on YouTube. We just dropped today. We traveled 1,300 miles to try our first Equifruit banana at the Canadian Produce Marketing Association. And as always, get us on Instagram at The Produce Industry Podcast. I want to thank all of our call-in guests, all of our commenters. We appreciate you. Listen, it's all about growing the industry together. I want to give everybody a shout out in the produce and supply chain industry to say 1 million downloads to the Produce Industry Podcast is not just an accomplishment for me. It is an accomplishment for our industry to get the word out of fresh produce and agriculture. So everyone,